Good evening and welcome to the National Virtual Expo. I'm Rob Malicki on Garigal land in Sydney, and welcome to this session on the Queensland University of Technology, QUT. I'm very grateful to be joined by some colleagues from QUT who I'm going to introduce you in just one moment. But before I do, can I just say, we're going to be talking about QUT, which is in one of my favourite, if not my favourite, student cities in all of Australia. Brisbane is an incredible place. And QUT is just a fantastic institution. So, having said that, I'd like to introduce you to Sarah and Tom from QUT. Sarah, Tom, welcome to the National Virtual Expo.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks for having us along tonight. It's great to be here.
Thank you, Rob.
It's great to have you here. And Tom, so you're a current student at QUT. Maybe before we get to the presentation, Sarah, you've got the presentation for us. But Tom, before we get to that, tell us about your experience. What do you love about studying at QUT?
Yeah, 100%. So, my name is construction management here at QUT. So it's been a very fun 4 years for me here at QUT. Certainly had a lot of fun meeting new people. The social aspect of QUT is fantastic. And then to add to that, obviously the academic side, being the university for the real world, is something we're very proud of. And I've definitely seen that unfold before me as I've gone throughout my degree, meeting real world lecturers, real world tutors, and having those really great industry connections has really set me up now as I'm ready to graduate and looking for jobs and things like that as well.
Yeah, awesome. Which campus have you been studying at?
So I've been at the Gardens Point campus. So that's the one most people will be pretty familiar with. Down on the river there, it's a beautiful campus. And we're joining you from the Kelvin Grove campus tonight.
Awesome. So funnily enough, I first visited Gardens Point. I remember walking onto campus for the first time and just being blown away by, I've been walking through the botanical gardens and suddenly I ended up in the campus and just saying, wow, what is this? It's a university. And just the energy of the place is always buzzing. And this was pre the new, it's not that new anymore, the engineering building. And then they put up the engineering building and I was like, wow, this place just keeps getting better and better. So just a vibrant place to be in the middle of the city, isn't it?
It absolutely is, and that really helps in with the social side of things too, having the city right on our doorstep, and as well for transport, it's super easy to be able to get into that campus. You've got the trains and the buses over at South Bank and then as well in the city, and if you're even feeling up to it, you can jump on the City Cat, and we have our very own ferry terminal over at Gardens Point, which is quite awesome.
Can we just hone in on Brisbane for 1 second too? Like for those people who might be joining us from overseas or watching this on the replay from overseas, why Brisbane? I mean, I love it. Honestly, that's not a word of a lie. My favourite city for students in Australia. But what do you love about Brisbane, Tom?
Yeah, so I still live at home. So I'm on the south side of Brisbane. But I do love coming into the city. I think the cultural aspect of Brisbane is amazing. Obviously, with South Bank as a precinct, just across from where we are at QUT, it's a really vibrant precinct. Lots of nightlife, lots of social things happening. You've got the Gabba, you've got Suncorp Stadium. Like we actually do have a really big sporting culture here in Brisbane as well. So I think that's awesome. And obviously really exciting on the horizon is the 2032 Olympics. So as we prepare for that, especially in my field of construction, we're seeing a lot of new buildings being built. Obviously we've had the new casino get built, that new Kangaroo Point Green Bridge. So it's a really happening city and there's lots of things going on. And as a student, that's quite exciting to be in and amongst the hustle and bustle of all of that. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, how about we get into this presentation? So this is the Year 12 Advice Night presentation, and like there's so much great information in here. As we go, please, ladies and gentlemen, joining us live, feel free to drop your questions in the chat. If you're watching on the recording, you can ask any questions you've got in the Discord down below, and also a Facebook group for parents, and we'll make sure that every question gets an answer. And also, if you're interested in inquiring to QUT, we do also have just a very small form down below. So if you've got a very specific question about your case, name, email, and just what your question is, and we'll make sure that gets through to QUT to get back to you as well. So without further ado, let's jump into the presentation.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us for our Year 12 Advice Night tonight. We've had a really good turnout, and we are absolutely thrilled that you're considering QUT and also that you've been able to take the time to join us online tonight. Before we get started, I would like to acknowledge the Turrbal and Yuggera people as the First Nations owners of the land where QUT now stands and where we are based tonight. We pay our respect to their elders, laws, customs and creation spirits, and recognise that these have always been places of teaching and learning and research. And I'd also like to acknowledge the important role Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander play within the QUT community. My name's Sarah Grinke. I'll be your host for tonight and presenting a fair bit of the information, but we also have 3 of our student ambassadors here tonight. So I'm just going to hand over to them for a little bit so they can introduce themselves, and they're going to jump in at various points tonight to talk about their experiences, and they'll also be available at the end for questions.
Hi guys, my name's Siobhan. I study the Bachelor of Nursing and the Bachelor of Public Health.
Hi there, my name's Ben. I'm currently studying a Bachelor of Secondary Education, majoring in Maths and Geography.
Hey, I'm Skylar. I'm studying a Bachelor of Engineering, majoring in Mechatronics.
Excellent. Thanks so much. So you'll have the chance to ask questions later. And as you can see, I've included there on the slides are different things that you might like to ask them questions about. Tonight's intended to focus more on broad information rather than QUT specific information. Rather than course specific information. So you can see we'll be covering key information about course and career decision making, entry to QUT, scholarships, study costs, uni life. And we'll also show you where you can find that detailed course information. Throughout the event tonight, you'll be able to ask questions using the Q&A function. So just look for the Q&A button and type your questions in there. We have 2 team members, Marley and Vanessa, who are working behind the scenes tonight and answering the questions as they come in. And as I mentioned, we'll also be available at the end to address any questions live. We'll be sending you a copy of these slides after tonight. So don't worry about noting down the content on the slides or taking photos. You can sit back and relax a little bit knowing that we'll send that information to you. All right, before we get started tonight, we're just going to take a little bit of a poll where we've got 2 questions just so we can find out a little bit more about you. So if you wouldn't mind answering those questions that have just popped up on your screen, we're really keen just to find out who's in our audience tonight, and also find out a little bit about where you are in your decision-making process. Okay, we might just end the poll now. Actually, I'll give it another little bit. Anyone else still wants to? Great, excellent. So we can see that most of our audience tonight is in Year 12 or parents of Year 12 student, which is great. But also we have some younger students and parents of younger students in the group as well, which is fantastic. I'm sure you'll find the information tonight really useful as you progress through your journey and your post-school decisions. So we can see that about 38% know exactly what they want to do when they finish school. That's fantastic. 53% are undecided, which is really fairly normal at this time of year. And 9% have no idea what they want to do when they finish school. So I guess what I'd like to do is no matter where you are, we're certainly going to help you with some things tonight. And it's okay, even if you're not sure what you want to do just yet. Okay, let's just move along. So the first thing that we're going to do tonight, I'm going to hand over to Ben, one of our student ambassadors. He's going to talk a little bit about why he chose QUT and why many students consider studying at QUT.
Thanks, Sarah. So there are many reasons why QUT might be the right choice for you. You've probably all heard about QUT being the university for the real world, and maybe you've wondered what that actually means. It's something we feel really passionate about here at QUT, and it means that as students, we're prepared not just with the theory, but also with the practical skills to be ready with our careers from day one when we step out into the real world. Every student has a different reason for choosing QUT and different things that they are looking for in a university. But I'm going to go through the many reasons why I personally chose QUT. But everyone has their own. These are just my highlights. So when looking for a university, I was looking for an institution which emulated the strong sense of community and belonging that I was fortunate enough to experience during my time at high school. For me, that was QUT. From the open day to the events I attended at QUT, there was always a friendly face who helped you out. Another reason I chose QUT was that real-world experience and learning. In my course, we are taught the theory while simultaneously it is modelled and practiced in our tutorials or lectures and other workshops so that we can develop the skills needed to step out into the real world with confidence. We also have a number of placement days as part of the education degree, which further enable us to develop these skills in a school setting. This leads me on to another reason why I personally chose QUT, which was the core structure of the education degree. In particular, the fact that the first placement you complete is in your first year. This helps you decide if teaching is the right career for you, but you get that taster of what being a teacher is actually like, because in this placement, you're not just observing teachers, but you're also getting the opportunity to take short episodes throughout the placement to develop to taking a full lesson by the end of the placement. Finally, there are a number of travel opportunities ranging from domestic to international and short and long-term options. There's also a number of scholarship opportunities on offer at QUT, which was something I was looking into when I was applying, and they all sounded pretty cool, as well as some opportunities such as the College of Excellence, which come with those scholarships. However, there's so much more to do at QUT apart from just the study. There are some examples on the screen, but some of the things I've been involved in are social sport. So I've trialed a variety of sports here at QUT, ranging from touch to volleyball, but I've settled on playing netball most semesters, even though I'd never played netball before studying university. I've also been active within the College of Excellence, which has provided a number of social and professional development opportunities and has honestly been the foundation for many of the friendships and opportunities I've experienced outside of my coursework at university. If College of Excellence isn't for you, there are over 120 clubs on campus, highlighting that there is so much more to do on campus than just your studies. From day one in Welcome Week, you're politely bombarded with the opportunities to become a part of so many communities, and I cannot recommend finding yours because it makes university so much more fun. There are also a number of job opportunities at university. For example, I work within the Ambassador Program, which whilst the pay is nice, it is the experience as part of the job and the community you become part of that are definitely the highlights. Lastly, and very quickly, there are a number of opportunities within certain faculties for travel as part of your study that aren't necessarily study either. For example, I've been to 2 trips to areas in regional Queensland with the education faculty, visiting schools in a variety of towns to see if there are places that I might see myself teaching in once I've graduated, or even potentially before I've graduated through a permission to teach option. One of these trips was to Mount Isa last year, and from that, I am now completing my placement this semester in Mount Isa. To get a head start on your research of QUT, study and life, I'll introduce you to Siobhan, who will run through our website.
Thanks, Ben. We'll now take a look at different types of QUT courses and where you can find more information you need to compare the different courses. To start with, we'll look at the different course options. So we have the diplomas or undergraduate certificates, which are a pathway into our undergraduate courses in case you don't get the ASAR or selection rank that you need to get into a specific course. They run from about 6 months to a year, and they'll give you a selection rank at the end of that course. We then have our undergraduate degrees, so our single degrees and then our double degrees. And there's a bit of a myth with double degrees that a double degree is double the whack, but that's not necessarily the case. A double degree is the same amount of work that you would be doing in a single degree, but over a slightly longer period of time. So a single degree is around 3 to 5 years, and then a double degree is 4 to 5.5 years, depending on what you study. We also have vertical double degrees, which is combining your undergraduate degree and your master's into one coherent course across 5 years. Now we'll look at different study areas and I'll show you how to find more information about the courses that interest you. So when you go onto the QUT website, you want to look into the study tab and then select undergraduate. And as you can see on this page, you have a whole different type of study areas. So from creative arts, justice, language, design, and things like that. But for today's example, we'll be going into health. Within health, we have many courses as well. So we'll scroll and navigate to nursing, and then we'll look at my double degree, which is the Bachelor of Nursing and Public Health. And one thing that I do commonly get asked about the Bachelor of Nursing, or why like double degrees and things like that. Personally, or why to study a double degree. Personally, I studied in nursing, but I really wanted to learn more about community, and nursing wasn't really giving me that. So I looked into like options of doing a double degree, and I saw public health, and public health really looked more so into community and things like that. And so I combined those interest areas and went into the Bachelor of Nursing and the Bachelor of Public Health. But if you don't want to study a double degree, you don't necessarily, and combine those areas, sorry, you don't necessarily have to. There's other ways of combining two interest areas within like a single degree, for example, like in business management, you might take up a second major, or you can potentially look into minors and things like that as well, or like even electives where you can do business related minors, so like public relations, for example. You can do languages, so the Brisbane University Language Alliance allows you to select different options within your languages, or you can even study from a different degree area altogether, so like IT, for example. We do have some specialized courses, so like optometry, which might be a little bit more specific and might not let you do that, but for most courses, you do generally have that option. But looking into the website, there are a few things that you really want to look at on this page. So the first thing is the entry threshold. That's the ATAR or selection rank you want to aim for if that's the course that you want to get into. It depends on what course that you study that will change depending on what course you want to study, sorry. We also have different campus delivery modes. So for example, I study at the Kelvin Grove campus, but we also have the Gardens Point as an option or online as well. On this page, also, you want to look at how long it will take and when it starts as well. This course page can also be great for researching what to expect within the degree. So for example, nursing and public health have a lot of placement hours. So I complete just under 1,000 hours of placement within my 2 degrees. So 800 hours within nursing and then 185 hours within public health. But that can also look like internships or industry projects as well, depending on the course you want to study. Careers and outcomes can show you, once you've completed the degree, any professional areas that you want to go into. Personally, I'm looking to graduate as a community nurse or potentially working in the public health sector. Finally, the detailed and units page is probably the page that I use most often, even as a 5th year. And this is where you can really get down to the nitty-gritty of each course. And it's the best way to combine 2 different courses that might be quite similar. So you can even look at each semester that you'll be looking into, but even the units within that semester, as well as the assignments and exams that you'll be completing within those specific units as well. I'll hand back to Sarah.
Thanks so much, Siobhan. So now that you know where you can find course information, let's just take a look about how you might go about choosing which course or career is for you. So this is a little framework recommended by our QUT career advisors. The first step is self-exploration. So this is where you want to think about the skills you have, so what you're good at, what you could build on. Also think about your personality, your interests and values, what you're looking for in life, what kind of lifestyle you want. So that might be that you want a career with creativity, you want work-life balance, you want to be able to travel. So all of those things. So some resources you could use here to do that exploration is Match My Skills, which is a QUT tool, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Or other tools like My Future or Your Career are great websites that will take you through questionnaires and help you explore this information. A tip here is to start with occupations first. So go broader rather than diving into courses straight away, because once you've decided on an occupation or have a few in mind, then you can investigate how to get there, because there may be more than one way. The next step is to explore the opportunities and the pathways. So this is where you want to ask people about their profession. What skills does the job need? How does it fit in with my goals? So you might want to ask around about who you know who's working in different areas of interest. You might want to develop some questions that you can ask them. And this is a really great time where parents can help by providing introductions to family, friends, acquaintances, and helping to start these conversations and kind of normalize having conversations about careers. So some questions you might like to ask might be, what does the job involve on a day-to-day basis? How did you get into your role? What's happening in the industry? So what are the changes? What are the future opportunities? And you might want to ask those questions related to your values and goals as well. So, you know, do you travel much? What kind of hours do you work? Is there an opportunity to make a difference? Things like that. So once you know a little bit about yourself and then you've found a match in a career and explored that a little bit, you then want to think about how you're going to get there. So how do you gain those skills you need to enter that profession? So you want to look at courses, you want to look at alternative pathways, whether they need additional study, are there double degrees, things like that. So for some careers, such as a lawyer, it's pretty straightforward. You need to have a law degree. For other careers, such as a web designer, there might be many different courses or pathways that you could use to get there. If you've got a few areas of interest, you might like to think about how you can combine them. So whether it's a double degree like Siobhan just spoke about, or is it something where you could do a second major or some electives within a flexible single degree? When you start looking at the courses, you want to think about which course is best for you. So you might have different criteria about which course is best for you, but some of the things that we've talked about already tonight are, what are the actual subjects you'll study? Like every university has a science degree, every university has a business degree, but by doing that deep dive that Siobhan just told you, that's where you'll find out what the flavour of that particular degree is and whether it's for you. So take that look into the actual subjects, look for things like your industry links, your practical experience, and whatever is important. You might want to think about whether further study is needed. So with careers like law and psychology, for example, it isn't just your single bachelor degree. There is postgraduate study required as well to become fully qualified. So just make sure you fully understand what's involved. So this point is where you want to talk to staff at universities, come along to open days, look at the uni websites and other resources from universities. I'd also say here, Google and LinkedIn are two really great, easily accessible resources. So say you're interested in something like being a construction manager and you think it sounds good, but you're not 100% sure what's involved. You can Google instruction manager. What do they do? What sort of industries do they work in? What other types of jobs are similar? You can go onto LinkedIn and look for a person who works in that field. So, for example, you're interested in psychology, you can look up LinkedIn profiles of psychologists, see what training they did, see what organisations they've worked for and the different job titles they've had. So they can be a really easy way to explore different options as well. Now, I mentioned before not to be worried if you're unsure where you're going. It's completely normal. Our research a little while ago showed that in November, around half of Year 12 still haven't 100% decided on their final choice of course or study. So if you're in that boat now, certainly don't feel that you're left behind. It's perfectly okay. Okay, I mentioned Match My Skills, which is the QUT tool. So this was created by a professional career advisor. So you can be assured that it'll deliver really useful results to you. By completing the quiz, you'll get a personalised list of career areas and courses that match you. You can complete it as many times as you want if your interests change, and parents can complete it on behalf of their child as well. It is a good way to perhaps confirm your current interest. So if you're someone that put your hand up before and said, no, I know what I want to do, this is a great way for you to confirm that that does kind of match your interests and skills. Or it might be a way to generate some new ideas to make sure you've considered all your options. Or of course, it's a great way to make a start if you're not sure. So we're going to take a look at the quiz now. It's going to be a very abridged version. It takes about 10 minutes to complete, so we won't do all the questions, but it'll just give you a taste of the types of questions involved. So the first thing we need to do is select our strengths. Subjects that we're good at school can be a good starting point for finding a career that suits us best. So there's obviously no right or wrongs here, but let's just say we think we're quite good at English, We think we're good at digital technology. We're quite good at legal studies. And we're good in the performing arts area as well. Okay, now for interest. So we obviously want a career in a space that we're interested in. So our first question here is, I'd enjoy working in a creative or design-oriented occupation. For today's example, we're going to say yes. Now, the next section is your interests. No, sorry. The next section is, sorry, it's about, oh, we're still on interest. Sorry, I've gone too far ahead. Sorry, the next question is, are we inquisitive, analytical, detail-oriented, or solutions-focused? So this is going back to a little bit of that self-exploration. Are they words I'd use to describe myself? In this example, I'll say probably not. Okay, and now we're looking at the skills we'd like to learn. So careers and study are all about development. So this is about things you might be excited to learn in the future and develop through your life, even if you don't necessarily have these skills now. So we're just saying what we're interested in: drawing, painting, making, or performing, those creative arts areas. We're going to say we're quite interested in those. So once you've worked through all of the skills questions, then you can lock in your answers. And once you complete the quiz, you'll receive your results. So in this example, it looks like a career where design is involved is something that will suit us best. We move further along. You'll also see there's a list of QUT courses that lead to careers in design or adjacent areas for me to consider. So at the end of this, you can also go on and explore all of those courses, click through to them, or you can email yourself your results and the course shortlist straight to your inbox. So
we might just take a little pause there, and I'm bring Tom in, because Tom, I think you could contribute something very valuable here. How did you decide what to study? Oops, it looks like you're on mute, actually. Hang on a second. One moment. There we go. Let's try again. Sorry, this is the risk of live streaming. I've muted your microphones. Let's give it another go. There we go. Sorry about that. Here we are. You're good now.
Okay, cool. Sorry, we're all good now. A few technical difficulties.
Yeah, we've got a little bit of an echo going on.
I think when it came to me picking my course, I was tossing up between a number of different study areas while I was still at high school. And I think from the conversations I had, it's really what led me down the path of construction management. So when I was talking to some of my parents' friends that are in the construction industry and hearing about what they do on a day-to-day basis, it really piqued my curiosity. And from there, I started going down the path of looking, okay, what do they actually do? What's involved in the course? And I actually found the QUT website really helpful in terms of looking at the full course structure. That was something I didn't really know you could do. You can actually look at the full course structure for a degree you might be thinking about. And it's from there that I really thought, okay, I can see what the subjects I'll be studying and how this is going to shape sort of a career, and the diversity of what was offered within that course. So being able to study some economics, being able to study some business, looking at different types of construction. I just thought the broadness of it, in terms of me not necessarily knowing where I wanted to end up specifically, but knowing something in construction, that's what drew me towards the course.
Yeah, it's one of those fascinating fields of study, isn't it? That, people kind of think construction, it's just like guys in hard hats banging bricks together, but it's actually so much more than that. This industry is one of the major industries in all of Australia, but you need all sorts of skills across construction management. You need people with business skills, you need communicators, you need designers, you need content creators. Like, you need literally somebody from every walk of life in order to make that whole industry work. And I suppose you get to see that from the inside.
Yeah, 100%. I think QUT also does a great job of bringing all those things together. We actually get to hear from architects, we get to hear from quantity surveyors, we get to hear from safety managers. And then, like you said, looking at the business side of things, we're working across different study areas, working with business students, with economic students, understanding how all those factors link into construction and are at play there. And I think that bringing in that real world aspect again is the collaboration, and cross industry collaboration is huge. And so QUT is not only very aware of that, but also constantly looking at ways that they can bring that into the course so that it's part of your learning, part of your understanding too.
Sarah, could I maybe bring you in for a moment there? I think we might touch on it a little bit later in the presentation anyway, but it feels like the right moment. Just talking about that cross collaboration between programs, and immediately I thought of the creative industries space sort of up at Kelvin Grove, and what a unique approach that is in terms of getting different fields of study, working together, collaborating, and obviously that's real world. So that's a real core part of what QUT is.
Yeah, absolutely. So our Creative Industries Precinct is a dedicated precinct where we have students studying from all different creative arts areas. And so, acting, writing, music, all those kinds of things, but also design and communication is there as well. So my daughter actually studied creative art. She studied creative writing there. So I can give you that real life example. So she did quite a few projects in her final year. One of them was to produce a magazine. And so they were working, she's a creative writer, but she was working with design students. There were projects where they were working with film and animation students, doing things like, all of the social media and promotion. They had to create a launch event for it as well. So, yeah, they were in small teams where they were working with people from different disciplines from right across the creative industries field to work on those projects and deliver them.
And I think this is one of the things that people really need to think about when they're heading into university is going to an institution that gives them that opportunity, those real world experiences, where you can interact with industry, you can collaborate with people from different disciplines, because let's face it, we know it, like once you're out in the working world, that is exactly what you're doing like every single day.
Yeah. And that QUTU curriculum we've spoken about before, Rob. So we have a new curriculum at QUT called QUTU, and it is specifically designed, there's two purposes. First of all, it's specifically designed to address the kind of most in-demand skills for the future that I think they surveyed about 1,000 global organisations, and they came up with this list, and it's designed to address those skills that are needed in the future, but also to really, as you say, encourage that collaboration amongst people in first year and third year, people in different study areas. So those units are common and can be selected across all of our undergraduate degrees. So it's quite likely that you could be in a class where you're an architecture student, but you're working with an education student or a nursing student or whatever in that particular subject in the assessment for that subject. So, yeah, designed to get those ideas going, which is really what coming to university is about as well.
I got so excited when I came across that program. I think it was last year. It's relatively recent, isn't it? It's about 18 months old
last
from
year
memory.
was the first year of its
Yeah.
introduction, so we're just into our second year now.
Yeah, and I interviewed Professor Jean Moyle, who was who really drove that project for the podcast. You can find that on the Shooting Your Uni podcast. But what I love about this is the fact that when you walk out of uni, you've got your degree, but so do like 10,000 other people. So how are you going to get your resume to the top of that pile? And in my view, it's all the extra stuff that you do at university, whether you're involved in clubs and societies, have you done an internship, have you done a study abroad and exchange, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But the QTU program is like such an advantage that every student gets, because it's deliberately taking people into that multidisciplinary realm. It's giving them other skills rather than just what you get from, nothing wrong just with the degree by itself. But a lot of unis don't do that. A lot of unis actually don't give you that extra stuff. And so once again, I think that's, when I saw that, I was just like, of course QUT is doing that. Like that, that just makes perfect sense.
Yeah, we're really excited about that program.
Should we get back to the presentation? Tom, we'll jump back in and hear more about what I'm really keen to dive into is around student life. I saw a question came through on the chat before asking sort of about timetable and how much time you spend at uni. So be keen to dive into that a little bit more, but let's just jump back into the presentation a little bit more. We're jumping in on Open Day, obviously one of the best places that you can learn more about QUT, and then we'll jump back out and have a bit more of a chat in just a few minutes' time.
Sounds good.
From courses, I just wanted to mention another great way to explore courses in more detail is, of course, at our Open Day. We've really only skimmed the surface tonight, and you can certainly ask our ambassadors questions about their courses later. But if you're seeking detailed course advice and really want to talk face-to-face with someone, please put Open Day in your diary now. This is the best opportunity all year for you to talk to staff and students from all different study areas, for you to see the campus and facilities and ask those really detailed questions from our academic staff, but also our specialist staff in support areas like scholarships and admissions and things like that. So before we move on, we might just pause here and ask a little question from one of our ambassadors. So I wanted to ask Skylar, we've been talking about course and career decision making. So if we just go back to that, Skylar, can you tell us why did you choose QT and what would be your top tips? So a resource, some advice you were given, someone you spoke to, something like that.
Yeah, so as Ben said before, QUT is marketed as the University of the Real World. And as someone studying engineering, I find it so valuable to learn stuff in lectures, get to put that into a bit more practice in tutorials, and then actually be able to get hands-on in the practicals and have assignments that really emulate that real world situation. And I'd say my top tip is to start building your network early. So sit next to random people in lectures, and just, yeah, really go to clubs, get to know heaps of people and build that support system from the very start.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Skylar. All right, we've talked about what courses and careers you might be interested in. So obviously the next step is getting into those courses. So what I'm going to do now is run through a summary of the key things you need to know. I'm also recognizing here that it's relatively early in the year. So you'll be hearing this information from school and other areas. And certainly if when you registered for tonight, you ticked the box saying you'll receive communications from QT, this is the kind of stuff we'll send out to you once it gets close to QTAC application time, so you don't miss out on this information. I'll also just mention here that this is intended for domestic students, so Australian or New Zealand citizens, and that each university does have its own admission rules and information. So this relates to entry at QUT. All right, entry to most courses, first of all, is based on academic merit, and we use ATAR or selection rank as our measure. So ATAR and selection rank are on the same scale. 99.95 is the highest, and that's across both of them, and they're treated the same for entry to QUT. So you're not disadvantaged whether you have an ATAR or a selection rank. So there's many pathways to QT, and this slide shows the different qualifications that we'll consider for entry to QT degrees or entry to QT diplomas. So you can see that you don't need an ATAR to gain entry to QUT. You might come in with an international baccalaureate diploma. You might have a VET qualification that you've completed at school, some performing arts qualifications like AMEB, or you may have completed some bachelor degree study like our Start QUT program or a similar program at another university. If you have an ATAR and then you also have one of those other qualifications, we'll use the best of your ATAR or selection ranks, or if you have multiple selection ranks, we'll use whichever one is the best. So we don't add them all together, we just take whichever one is the highest. Okay, so when you're looking at our course information, whether that's online or in our publications, you will see the threshold. So you can see it up there in the corner. I've taken a screenshot. So the ATAR or selection rank threshold for this course was 74. So you can use that as a guide. Thresholds can change from year to year. That's based on the number of places in the course, the number of people applying for the course, and the academic merit, so the ATAR or selection rank of those people who apply. They aren't known in advance. So the way it works in a very simple example is, say we have 100 places available in a course. We make offers to students who have 99.95 as an ATAR selection rank first, then we go to 99.90 and so forth. And the ATAR or selection rank of the last person admitted to that course, the 100th person, that becomes the course threshold. So you can see in that way that we can't know what it will be in advance, but we do provide the 2026 thresholds as an indicator of what it might be for 2027 entry. One way you can gain more certainty, though, is through our offer guarantee and our VET guarantee. So this ATAR selection rank threshold that I mentioned can change from year to year. Our offer guarantee and VET guarantee means if you achieve an ATAR or selection rank equal to or higher than the offer guarantee, you're guaranteed a place in that course regardless of what the final threshold is. And the same, if you have the specified VET qualification, you're also guaranteed a place regardless of what that threshold does for that year. So it gives you peace of mind once you know your ATAR or selection rank. You still need to include the course on your QTAC application and meet any subject prerequisites or requirements. So moving on, if you're studying some of these other qualifications, this slide shows where you can find different selection ranks that are available. So things such as the IB diploma, vet study, some of our overseas or non-standard qualifications. If you go to our recent secondary education page, that is probably the best starting point for all of your advice about ATARs and selection ranks and what you need for entry to QUT. The second thing to consider when you're looking at entry is subjects. So people often want to know what subjects do they need, what are the prereqs for our course. And one good thing to know is that QUT has an assumed knowledge scheme for most of our course. So that gives students the opportunity to gain entry to a course regardless of what subject choices they made back in year 10. So if you don't have the required knowledge through school or the bridging studies, it won't be a barrier for entry for most of our courses. So we do recommend that you do undertake the subjects at school if you can, or through a bridging course if you don't have the knowledge through school, just because otherwise you can struggle a little bit with the content because we are still teaching at the level that assumes that you have that knowledge, but it does just still give you a little bit of a leeway in terms of what subjects you choose at school and then what courses you go on to study. QUT offers bridging courses in math methods and general maths, but we also accept bridging courses from other providers. Of course, you'll see that we also have a couple of courses that do have prerequisites, and the difference here is that you must complete those subjects at school or through a bridging course before you can be considered for a course offer for those courses. And just to be aware that we have specific English language requirements for nursing degrees, and that's applicable to all universities offering nursing courses. One scheme that's been really popular at QUT is our Year 12 Early Offer Scheme, and it's a great way to shore up your course offer before you finish school. On your last day of school, you can receive an offer. So that's before you receive your ATAR if you're eligible. So the scheme includes more than 80 single double degrees. It's based on your subject results. So for example, your internal assessments 1, 2, and 3 if you're studying QCE. It is open to domestic and international Year 12 students who are studying those programs. And if you're eligible, you include one of the courses that's part of the program in your top 3 preferences. We'll invite you to upload your documentation. So that might be a screenshot from your QCAA student portal showing your results by late October. Then we'll let you know if you're approved to receive an early offer, and then we'll make offers through QTAC to approved applicants on the last day of school. So you don't need to do anything for it now. You don't need to worry about it until QTAC opens, but it's just good to know that it's an option. And if you visit that early offer website, it's very clearly laid out with all the steps that you need to follow and all of the deadlines you need to be aware of. So going back to the online course information that Siobhan showed you a bit earlier, the next tab along from details and units, which is what she looked at, is the requirements tab. So this is where you'll find the assumed knowledge, or if it's a course that has prerequisites, this is where it'll be. For this course, it's a business degree and the assumed knowledge is English. So that's included very clearly there. You'll also see if it is part of the offer guarantee or vet guarantee, and you'll see the Year 12 early offer scheme information highlighted. So we're committed at QUT to ensuring Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students achieve their goals through higher education. So we do offer a culturally responsive admission pathway. If you are an Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander student and you identify on your QTAC application and include QUT in your top 3 preferences, we'll invite you into to participate in the entry program, which involves an interview and also recognises study, skills, commitment, and other life experiences. Once you study at QUT, we have an Ujuru unit at both campuses that provides cultural connection as well as academic and personal support. Okay, the next thing that I want to go through are adjustment schemes. So we have 6 different adjustment schemes available for Year 12 students. This means that an adjustment is applied to your ATAR or your selection rank, and that can make you more competitive for a course offer. If you're eligible for more than one of these schemes, you can receive a maximum adjustment of 10 ATAR or selection rank. So you can see it can make a real difference if they are applicable to you. So they do apply to most of our courses, and any that they don't apply to are included on the bottom of each of the adjustment schemes. So the first one is our educational access scheme, and this applies if you've had difficult circumstances that have had a negative impact on your most recent studies. So you might be eligible under the education access scheme for an adjustment. There's 5 different categories here. So everything from home responsibilities or school environment. So that might be thing when we've had floods that have impacted schools and so forth. And then a major one is struggling financial, so the financial hardship category. And if you're eligible under this category with QT, you can receive an adjustment of 6 selection ranks, as well as a guaranteed $4,200 scholarship when you get started at uni. So make sure you do check out the Educational Access Scheme section on your QTAC application. Just have a look at the others. So we have our regional and remote student access scheme. So recognising that schools in those areas may have restricted or limited access to the same kind of educational opportunities or resources or services compared to those in larger towns. So we'll provide an adjustment of 2 8-hour selection ranks for students who fall into this category. So on the website, you'll find a searchable map and list of postcodes. And we use the student's residential address provided on your QTAC application. So if you are a boarder at a boarding school, make sure you use your home residential address rather than your boarding school address. Okay, the next one we have is our Priority Schools Adjustment Scheme. All schools in Australia have something called an ICSEA value, and the ICSEA value is a ranking of the community socio-educational disadvantage. And our priority schools are those ones that have a lower ICSEA value, which means that they may not have resourcing and services at the same level as perhaps other schools. So if you're completing Year 12 at one of these schools, you'll receive an adjustment of either 2 or 4 ranks, depending on what the ICSEA value of the school is. There's a range of support services at QUT when students commence. So we have plenty of support to help students once they're here. The school's ICSEA value can be found on the My School website, and there's a link on the web page there that takes you to the My School website, so you can check whether your school, what their ICSEA value is. So QTAC will assess that based on your application. You don't need to do anything special. They'll apply the adjustment automatically. The next thing is our Elite Sport Entry Scheme. So QUT is a gold tier member of the Australian Institute of Sport Elite Sport Education Network, and we have a number of students who are athletes or competitive sports people or coaches or officials that we support. So you can receive an adjustment of up to 6 selection ranks, depending on whether you're at state, national or international level. Generally applies to Sport Australia recognised sport, and applications are again made through the QTAC application. Even if your sport is outside of Sport Australia recognised sports, you're still encouraged to apply for consideration. Once athletes are here at QUT, you can also apply for our Elite Athlete Program, which is kind of a support program that provides things like flexible learning, lighter loads, might be deferred exams and things like that to help manage your travel and sport commitments. And there's also a scholarships program. So both of those are worth looking into if you are an elite athlete or sports person. And then moving on to the next one, we have our Year 12 subject scheme. So this is where we provide 8-hour or selection rank adjustments for students completing certain subjects in Year 11 and 12. And also if you've completed a university program such as Start QUT or the same kind of program at another university. So we provide adjustments for specialist maths, physics, or a language other than English. And we also provide an adjustment for students who undertake engineering or creative arts subjects if they are going into engineering or creative arts courses. So have a look into that as well. In the creative arts area, we recognise both general and applied subjects for an adjustment. And you can receive up to 8 adjustments across all of those. And finally, we have our first generation adjustment. So this is for students who might be first in their family or the first generation to participate in higher education. And to assist these students, we have an adjustment of 2 selection ranks that can be made to either their ATAR or selection rank. And again, this is identified through your QTAC application. So there's a couple of questions there they'll ask, and then QTAC will apply those adjustments automatically. So we mentioned you might be eligible for 1 or more of those. We encourage you to take your time to have a little bit of a look into them, and then be prepared that you might need to submit some supporting documentation. So just allow yourself time to take a look into those. Something that's really important to keep in mind is that there are pathways to QT if you don't get the ATAR that you need for your preferred course. So you can undertake further study to receive a new selection rank for entry to your preferred course in the future. So it's not again that you add that on to your existing ATAR, you actually get a new selection rank, and that's called upgrading. So we recommend the upgrading pathways that you'll see on the screen right now. A QUT diploma is ideal. You can complete it in 8 months to a year, and then you receive guaranteed entry to a relevant QUT degree, or you'll receive a selection rank that you can use for other QUT courses. If you're looking at a really competitive degree that has a high threshold, 1 year of degree study is the most effective way to upgrade into those courses. So if you complete a standard year of full-time study and pass all your subjects with a grade point average of 4s, which is just the passing grade, you'll have a minimum selection rank of 93, which is really competitive, and you can get higher selection ranks with higher grade point averages. Another thing to consider is TAFE or other providers. So you can undertake a diploma or a certificate at TAFE or through another vet provider, and you can see the different selection ranks you can get for those as well. And we also have TAFE QUT dual awards. So this is similar to the QUT diplomas, except the diploma component is completed at TAFE, and then you get automatic entry to a related QUT degree with credit for the units that you've completed. So a few options there for you to consider. We've talked about the diplomas a couple of times tonight, so I just wanted to show you these on a screen just so you can see the range of them and how they work. So with these, you can study the Diploma in Architectural Studies, for example, and then you get guaranteed entry to the Bachelor of Architectural Design or the Bachelor of Built Environment. Now, you can actually choose these as a combined pathway at QTAC, so you can actually select the Diploma in Business and the Bachelor of Business as a QTAC course from scratch, or you can just enter into the Diploma of Business or into the Diploma of Creative Industries or whichever one it is, and upon completion, we'll still give you guaranteed entry to the courses listed. We also have a university preparation program, which is a free 1-year course. It's designed to give you the skills for university success and can also help you meet assumed knowledge or prerequisites. It will give you a selection rank of 75 on completion that you can use to gain entry to QUT courses. It's a good option to keep in mind if you don't feel particularly confident after completing school, or if you don't come to university straight away and want to come back to university at a later time and want that more supportive entry to your bachelor degree.
We might jump out there, and I'm going to welcome Sarah and Tom back to the stage. So just give me a second while I get my screen. Sorry, folks. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
My display is not. Oh, there we go. It's good
We're here.
to have you guys back. So what we'll do is, like, in fact, there's more details. We do have more of that session. We're just conscious of time, so we do have more of that session. Which, if you want to dive into the details and continue to look at some of those details, it will be available in the full recording of this session, and that'll be available after 7:30 Eastern Standard Time this evening. But since we have Tom here, maybe Tom, I'll start with you, and we can bring Sarah back as well to ask some other questions too. But let's hone in on student life and start by maybe talking about the different campuses and what life is maybe like between the two different campuses.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm based at the Gardens Point campus, as we spoke about earlier, but I have spent a lot of time over at this Kelvin Grove campus, particularly for a lot of the social sports that we do and some of those extracurriculars. A lot of our sports facilities are based here at Kelvin Grove. So over at J Block, we have a really awesome sports facility, sports field there. We've also got the underground courts in our Musk Avenue building there as well. And it's a bit more of a precinct here at Kelvin Grove. So a lot of our external accommodation partners, so for those that are listening that are maybe from interstate and are looking to move to Brisbane, you'll probably find a home over at Kelvin Grove because we've got Igloo, Scape, Student One, those external providers we work very closely with. They have their buildings here on Kelvin Grove. So a lot of people that are living or have moved from home will be here in Kelvin Grove with the shops close by. And then they've also got those bus options to be able to get into the city with the busway having a stop, QUT Kelvin Grove dedicated stop, which is quite cool. And for the courses you'll find here at Kelvin Grove, you'll have a lot more of your health courses. So all of our nursing and paramedic students are based here. So you'll often see students walking around in the paramedic gear here at Kelvin Grove, or maybe in their nursing scrubs, QT nursing scrubs. We've also got, like you touched on before, our creative students up at the Z Block precinct. So all of our film, technology, sound production students, they're all based here, along with a lot of our design students as well in the Z Block design labs. And then heading over to Gardens Point, that's where you find a lot of our engineering, science, all of our business students at Gardens Point, as well as all our law students. So we've got the law library at Gardens Point, which is one of our older buildings, but it's a fully dedicated law building with all of the hard copy court documents. There's librarians in there full time that can help the law students with all of their researching and referencing. And one of the really cool things in that building is the moot courts. So I've actually got some courts in there for students to do some mooting, practicing some of their debating style, being in a courtroom. And those are actually the backups for the Queensland Supreme Court as well. So if anything was to happen to those, the lawyers would pick up their stuff and QUT is where they'll head, which is quite cool. And they're getting revamped at the moment. So hopefully those will be looking new and fresh soon to come. And then you've also got, like you touched on, with the new engineering building at P Block. Is an amazing building, really. It's a 5 Green Star energy building. So that's been really cool. I've actually got opportunities to explore that and some of the plans behind that as part of my degree, and what actually went on around building that and why they did the things they did as a bit of a model for future buildings. Quite cool. We've also got the Gardens Point Theatre there. So we host TEDx QUT events at that theatre. We've also, that's opposite Kidney Lawn there. And obviously Old Government House too is over at the Gardens Point campus, which is quite nice to have that little bit of historical touch there. And you can actually go in there and look at what that used to be before the university was built. And that's incredible. So I've done that myself. Would highly encourage anyone visiting Brisbane just to head over to the campus and check it out and have a look at what used to be there before the amazing facilities at QUT.
Yeah, I love that. I'm glad you pointed out the QUT TEDx. That's really quite unique. And ladies and gentlemen, jump on, check out some of the content that's been created through TEDx QUT. It's I had a friend of mine that actually helped to run that program for many years. So I've watched a lot of TEDx from QUT, which is awesome. And then the esports as well. That was one of the first esports dedicated esports spaces that I'd seen at any Australian university.
Yeah, and it's fantastic. It's incredible. They've got some really high-tech computers set up in there, and students basically go on sort of a membership thing where they have access to that, and then we actually run our esports teams through that as well. And right next door, you've got the commentary box. So QUT actually organises a lot of high school esports competitions, and will provide a running commentary for those as well, which is a cool opportunity for some students to get involved.
That's brilliant, and I just love that because somebody does that as a career. They're a commentator on esports, right? And this is the beautiful thing. I think if you're in year 12 right now or even younger, and you're like, oh my God, I got to decide what I want to do. In fact, you probably don't even know yet the job that you're going to go into. You don't even know that it exists, because once you get out to university, you start exploring these things. Oh, there's an esports club. You join the esports club, and then suddenly you're in with the commentators. And who knows if that's actually what your career becomes. So it's not about trying to decide right now what your future is going to be. You just need to be picking a direction and taking those first steps. And of course, having all this stuff available on campus just for you to explore really is opening doors and allowing you to see the opportunities that are out there.
100%. And building that network too, meeting new people, and because there's those conversations and that network that will ultimately probably lead you to those jobs. I think if you looked at the stats, I'm not 100% sure, but a lot of jobs in this day and age come from who you know. It's about the people that you know and the connections that you've built. So being on campus and being around that is certainly a productive environment to be looking at moving into the real world and getting a job.
So obviously if you your degree of interest is only taught at one campus, decision made. That's easy. But if somebody did have the choice between Kelvin Grove and Gardens Point, how do they make that call? What would you recommend, Tom?
Yeah, so with the way our degrees are structured, they're actually usually offered at one or the other campus. So students wouldn't necessarily get to pick a law degree and then decide if they wanted to study at Gardens Point or at Kelvin Grove. They would be a Gardens Point student because the degree is associated with that campus. There is very few courses that do have that crossover. So for some of our biomedical students, there's certain labs at Kelvin Grove and certain labs at Gardens Point that they'll have to use throughout their degree. So they'll be at both. But for a lot of our students, the course is dictated to one campus or the other. So they're not really getting that choice in terms of where they want to study. It's more so what they want to study. And then when you look on the website, it'll show you, okay, if it's business, you'll be at Gardens Point. If it's nursing, you'll be at Kelvin Grove. Yeah.
And look, that makes complete sense, right? Like if you're doing business and law, you want to be in the heart of the CBD. So
That's right.
that makes complete sense. But the beautiful thing about that is that you also have access to these two different campuses as a QUT student. So and I remember walking into Kelvin Grove for the first time. I'd always been going to Gardens Point and just, wow, this place is amazing. All those little sections of rainforest and the sporting facilities that you were talking about, amazing sporting facilities. And just like this super cool little amphitheater space with everybody just chilling out and chatting to one another between classes. Yeah, it was a real discovery, and the whole precinct around there is magnificent too. So make sure if you do end up at QUT, don't just stay in your little bubble. Get on that shuttle bus and head up the road or down the road to go and explore the opportunities that this institution has for you, because not a lot of universities have that kind of opportunity. Even though it's the same institution, everything's accessible to you, different vibes, different choices. So go make the most of that.
I'm glad you mentioned that too, with the free inter-campus shuttle. It's fantastic. If you're going to start your morning at Kelvin Grove, you jump on that shuttle for free as a student, and within 15 minutes, you're at the other end of the city. So that's been really cool, especially for me. I'll be able to go to class in the mornings at Gardens Point, and then I'll jump on the shuttle if I have social sport or if I'm catching up with friends at Kelvin Grove. That really easy transport. Yeah.
Sounds good. Hey, Sarah, could I maybe bring you back on stage and maybe we can talk a little bit about scholarships? We can sort of jump in and talk about scholarships. I know there's covered a little bit in the presentation, but obviously a big topic for students who are interested in some financial support or who are performing well at the school. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about scholarship opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a number of different types of scholarships. So the key ones, most universities have obviously for high achievers. So students who achieve an ATAR of 98 or above are eligible to be considered for our excellence scholarships, and they're available across all of our courses. There's no application separate to applying through QTAC for those. So that's a big draw card that students don't need to submit a laborious separate scholarship application. They'll be considered if they apply for QUT and if they've got that ATAR. So, and then there's some other scholarships that are similar based around those high achievers in different faculties and so forth. Then we have our equity scholarships, which are for students who have experienced disadvantage from and financial hardship. So that goes a really long way to supporting those students. We support, I think, about 2,000 or 3,000 students a year through our equity scholarships. We have about 4 million that we allocated. So it is one of the largest scholarship funds for students in need. And with that, there's no academic results taken into consideration. It is purely financial need that we look at for that one. So those ones, and then we have a range of other ones. So we have some for students moving from regional and remote areas, students who are Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people, and then, as I said, some related to specific courses or disciplines as well. So we do just encourage students to get on our scholarships website. They can search by study area, or they can use those filters to say, I'm from a low income background, or I'm a high achiever, or whatever, and just see what's available.
So if you're watching, apply for scholarships. I'm going to bring Tim back on. Apply for scholarships. Like you would be amazed. Like this perpetually does my head in. The number of times I hear from people from unis all around Australia, the money doesn't always get spent just because people don't apply. And honestly, sometimes it's that mindset, like you're not the ducks of the school and you think, I'm never going to get a scholarship. No, like listen, at $4 million of support for students who really need it. Please, please, please check out that scholarships website. We'll drop it down in the chat there and apply for a scholarship because you just don't know. Yeah. Maybe we can move on then, since I've got you both up now on stage, and we can talk a little bit about support. So student support at QUT, what sort of things are available and sort of how to access them. Earlier in the week, I had a session with a recently completed student. We talked about making friends. Like a lot of people are worried about making friends at uni. So I'd say go back and watch that session. It's called What's Uni All About Anyway. So maybe we stay away from the kind of friend making side of things, because that's kind of dealt with quite a lot. And we hone in like other things that people might be worried about and the support that they can get for them at QUT.
Yeah, 100%, Rob. That's a great thing to have a think about. As a student, it can be quite a big step up going from high school to university, and there's a bit of a myth out there that there's a lack of support and students kind of getting thrown in the deep end and having to figure it out themselves, which, there's a bit more responsibility on you to manage your workload and things like that. But when it comes to things like new software is a massive one. A lot of students will be using software that they've never heard of, never interacted with before, and that can be a bit of a challenge. So we run workshops within the library for students looking to explore new software. So things like Revit, a lot of the AutoCAD and engineering software. They'll have tutors who are students coming in and helping students that are working on projects in their first year with those softwares. So they'll actually be unpacking it and showing them how to break it down. We also offer a number of workshops related to researching and referencing, because that can be quite a challenging skill when you come to university, is understanding how to be able to research at that higher level and cite everything appropriately to avoid, any issues with plagiarism and things like that. So being able to reference is something we help with a lot for our students. As well, time management. Sorry, you got me still?
Pardon me, that was my mistake.
Yeah, that's all good. Like time management, we also run like sort of nights against procrastination, where we'll bring students in and sort of mentor them in terms of, okay, how are you going managing your schedule? Is there anything you're struggling with, looking at planning effectively and how to, I guess, organize your time so that you're allocating enough to each subject. So there's a number of different, I guess, academic based support services. And then if you look aside from academics, looking at personal well-being, mental well-being and health, we have a number of support services around that. We've got some health facilities on campus. So they're on-campus health facilities that are available to all our students, as well as disability support services, being able to work with a team and come up with a plan around your assessments and things like that. And another point that often gets missed a little too is if you're an elite athlete, we have an elite athlete program where we'll be able to support you around if you have competitions or very heavy training blocks that fall, alongside assessments. We can support you in that, being able to give you extensions, delays, things like that too.
Yeah, love it. Love it.
Yeah.
So lots of flexibility and opportunity there to get the support that you need at institution.
100%.
And a bit like the scholarships, if I can say that too, if you feel like you need help, always reach out. Like,
Yes.
I think the only time, like, universities are so well configured to help people, whether it's academic, whether it's mental health, they have medical services if you're crook and you need to see a doctor. Like, the support services are amazing, but they can't help you if they don't know about you. So always jump, just always go and reach out for that help. And normally it's confidential. It's very personal, you know what I mean? Like, very attentive to you. So it's not something to be worried about if you do need extra support services. Those are definitely there for you. Maybe
Jump in on one thing. If you're not sure where to start, because that can be a challenge too, is knowing where to start. HiQ is our student support team. They're the ones in orange. They're on both campuses and they're also online a lot. Just give them a phone call, give them an email, and they are the people who are designed to put you in touch with the right people. So if you don't know where to start, HiQ is our student support. Talk to them and they will put you through to the right people.
Perfect. There you go. It's made easy. Yeah, and that's not always the case. Like, there are some big institutions out there where you got to fight your way through the bureaucracy. So just having that one access point is a real advantage to you as well. Let's move on and talk about timetable. There was a question that came through earlier asking about like how much time you end up studying, and I think you put a response up there, Tom. But do you want to talk to that? Like, what's it like timetable-wise? How much time do you spend in class? That side of things.
Yeah, 100%. So my answer to that one was around a full-time student looking at 3 hours face-to-face. So that usually is 1 hour of a lecture and then 2 hours of a tute, or it can be vice versa. So about that 3 hours. So 12 hours of class time. And then in and around that, you're able to be flexible in terms of how much time you allocate to your study. So I put there 2 to 3 hours. That will vary depending on, whether it's, week 7 or 8, you've got all your assignments due in week 9. Or whether it's that earlier in the semester where there isn't really too much to be keeping on top of, so you're able to drop off. So I guess it's very flexible. You're looking at, I would say, around about 20 to 30 hours of time you want to allocate to university, to be university time throughout the week in order to stay on top and manage everything. But that is so flexible, and you're able to bring in work, social, all different aspects of life that really can thrive alongside university, especially with everything being online nowadays too. The flexibility is increased with that.
Yeah, and of course, some every discipline will be different, right? So some will have less class contact, some will have heaps of class contact, but maybe less like work outside of class. But
That's right.
basically, like the Australian qualifications framework, it's called, that's going to thrill everybody. AQF basically means that in order for you to get a qualification, you have to do a certain volume of work. So what that mix looks like will always vary. But the sort of volume, whether it's in person or otherwise, sort of remains fairly consistent. Let's talk about some of the sort of other opportunities there. I'd love to jump into exchange. I know the guys at the student exchange team have known them for many years. I'd love to hear about like overseas study opportunities. And then we talked a little bit about QUTU as well. But any of those other things outside of class, we've talked about clubs and societies and sport, anything else outside of class that students might consider dipping their toes into while they're at QUT?
Yeah, so an exchange is a huge one. I was actually recently lucky enough to go on my own exchange. I went to Canada at the end of last year for 6 months and got to study over there, which was incredible. Would highly recommend that as an experience for anyone to undertake whilst they're at university. If you can't quite commit though to a full 6 months, or even sometimes you can do a year of exchange, we do also offer a number of short-term study programs and international experiences. So within my course, we do a lot of study tours where you might be going to Paris to look at the architecture in Paris. I mean, how cool is that? I'm recently signed up to go to Fiji. We're doing a Fiji study tour where we're looking at community infrastructure over there, and particularly with a focus on sustainability. So going over to do some research over there. There's also a number of short-term study programs that go over to Asian countries and look at business operations in those countries. Or you could even do like a 1 to 2 week language tour study program, which is something we offer as well. So yeah, there's heaps of those international opportunities. And then locally too, we also have opportunities for students to be able to attend like local seminars and local conferences. I know for our engineers, they actually do like an engineering games. So they'll actually go and participate in I'm not sure if you're familiar with that program. I have some friends that have recently gone and done the engineering games, I think that's what they call it, where they actually get to hands-on, do some work with, machine, like drilling guns or looking at like railway lines. So they're actually like hands-on getting to meet some mining companies. So those little opportunities are things you might not hear about until you're at uni. They're certainly here and lots of them.
Yeah. Look, and once again, we were talking about this earlier. The stuff you do outside of class not only is fun, but it is the stuff that like builds that resume for you and will lead you to extraordinary places. These overseas study opportunities. In fact, there's a funding source for that as well. If you're like, I'll never be able to afford that, it's called OS Help. It's part of HEX Help, so the help scheme where you can borrow. I think it's like $8,500 nowadays to help you have an international study experience. So these things you're talking about, Tom, Fiji, Paris. I mean, come on, this is amazing. But what's really valuable, ladies and gentlemen, is look into it early. When you first start your degree, check out what those opportunities are. Make sure that you can sort of start to think ahead, plan that structurally inside your degree, saving up money if you need to. Because, Tom, true or false, one of the best experiences ever, right?
True, 100% true. Yeah, it was awesome. And that advice is actually exactly what I say to students. Start early, plan early, give yourself the time to work it into your degree, and then it also helps you to be able to save. And I was lucky enough to get that OS Help funding as well. So without that, it probably wouldn't have been the same experience because it would have been a bit tight for money.
Yeah, for sure. And the Australian government has a great scheme called the New Colombo Plan as well. So make sure I'll share all of this stuff. In fact, you'll see that throughout the National Virtual Expo. I'm really talking that up because it's such an extraordinary opportunity as well. I think we're getting pretty close to time here. I haven't got any sort of further questions from the chat. So maybe just by way of wrapping up, I might ask both of you just for like a final top tip for applicants. Tom, I'll throw you like the top tip for making the most out of uni. And Sarah, maybe I'll just let you spruik. Like, why
Okay.
QUT? So, of course. And then maybe I'll throw in my 2 cents worth at the end too. But Tom, making the most out of uni, like, what's your top tip for students?
Have the conversation. Talk to people. Don't go to university and meet no one new. I think the people you meet is what makes your experience. So put yourself out there and be brave when you first get to university. Build those connections, because I can tell you it's a snowball effect. That first conversation leads to the second, and then they know someone, you get brought into a group here, and that's how you not only meet people, but also make the connections that might lead you to a job or lead you to joining a club, leading a club, and all those little things that you talked about that can really set you aside.
Amazing. Thank you. And Sarah, why QUT?
Why QT? I'm very fortunate. We have about 100 student ambassadors like Tom that we work with, and what I learn from them is that QT saying the university is the university for the real world is real, because I hear from them all the time about their experiences. You know, we've heard so much from Tom tonight, but times that by 100, and that's what we hear whenever our student ambassadors are with us at events and things like that. So I'm just always really inspired by what the university offers students and how they grab it with both hands and really make the most of it, as well as Tom's just said. It's really fantastic to hear. So yeah, if you want a piece of that real world education, then this is the place to come to. So I would say come along to Open Day if you can. It's in July. It's the single best opportunity to check out the campuses that we've spoken about tonight, talk to all of our lecturers, and really ask those questions about what is the experience that I'll get in this course, what's the experience that I'll get at QUT. And if you're not able to, our advisors through HiQ also help future students, not just current students. So, you know, our advisors are here to answer your questions, give you the advice you need, anything about QUT.
You're very lucky to get to deal with so many incredible students. Like, that to me, when I was working on campus, was the best thing. Like, just the energy, the stories, the transformation that higher ed gives you is phenomenal.
Yeah, best part of the job.
Is the best part of the job. Yeah. Awesome. And look, so I might just throw in a last little thought for those people who are maybe elsewhere in Australia, maybe careers advisors even, or people from overseas who might be seeing this, and like, why QUT? To me, as I said right at the top, the best city in Australia for students by none. We didn't even talk about the 50-cent public transport fares right now. I mean, you will save thousands of dollars just on public transport because of the 50-cent fares. Lifestyle, sunshine, culture, great vibes, amazing universities, QUT being an absolute standout. Your opportunities at this institution are absolutely phenomenal. So whether you are somewhere else in Australia looking to try and find your place in the sun, I would absolutely think about moving to Brisbane for QUT. And from overseas, you're going to be hard pressed to find a nicer part of Australia, in my view, than in magnificent Brisbane at this fantastic institution. So thanks both for joining me. You've given me a very generous amount of your time this evening at the National Virtual Expo. It's been fantastic having you here. And I think that's us.
Thanks for having us, Rob.
Yeah, thanks so much, Rob. Good to talk to everyone as well.
Great to chat. Good night, everybody. Well, I hope you got something out of this session. And if you have any questions at all, you can head to choosingyouruni.com and ask Lumen. Lumen is your AI guide who knows about every university, every pathway, every option that we've talked about throughout this virtual expo. And Lumen is available to talk to you 24/7. So it's ready when you are.